It's small minds like yours that stand in the way of progress. But this is too big a thing. Bigger than you.
You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
I don't think you're giving us our due credit.
Welcome to Journey Through Sci-Fi, where we journey through the many subgenres of science fiction on screen. I'm your host, James.
And I'm Matt. This series, we're exploring the sci-fi subgenre of mad science. And in today's episode, we will be looking at science going on sale. We're talking about the commercialization of mad science.
It's up for sale. We could buy it. We could buy it in stores. Commercialize it.
We're going to make $1 billion at the box office.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we are looking at in today's episode, when these mad scientists, this mad science goes up for sale. And how can we sell this crazy science? And what are the repercussions of that? It all gets very deep. But what are we covering, Matt?
The films that we're looking at for this commercialization topic are The Man in the White Suit, the Ealing comedy from 1951, directed by Alexander McKendrick, and Jurassic Park from 1993, directed by Steven Spielberg.
Who's this Steven Spielberg guy? Never heard of him.
I don't know, man, but I've seen this film of his, and I think he's going places.
He's going places, I'm sure. Wow, there's two big films here. Like Man in the White Suit, people have been recommending this to us for a long time as a big moment in sci-fi history, and in terms of like niche films that not many people, unless they're enthusiasts of the genre, might have come across. But Jurassic Park, everybody knows it. Everybody loves it as far as I'm concerned. Don't want to hear anything from the haters.
I don't know if it would have many haters. I've never spoken to someone who has seen it and doesn't like it.
I'm sure they're out there. It'll be all these people which are just like, dinosaurs, silly dinosaurs.
I think they wouldn't watch the film.
Yeah, someone would make them. Someone like me would make them watch this.
Get into an argument with them.
Exactly. Just for the sake of an argument. That's what I would do.
But we're not here to argue, are we, James? We're good friends. Shall we get started talking about The Man in the White Suit, which I don't think either of us had seen before?
No.
Alec Guinness, the screen's most versatile star, triumphantly augments his gallery of brilliant film portraits as the Man in the White Suit.
Hello.
He saw his great discovery as a force for good.
It's more important than anything. It's going to astound the world.
They saw in it a danger to his fellow men and branded it a threat to industry.
We need control of this discovery. Complete control. If you want twice the amount in that contract, we will pay it.
$250,000 to suppress it.
Yes. You're an irresponsible young idiot.
Father, no.
Knudsen!
And you're a pompous and ungrateful old ass.
Oh!
Sydney!
Knudsen!
No, Father!
Knudsen!
If you think I'd give my invention to you, you must be crazy. I wouldn't give it to you if you were the last man on earth. I wouldn't give it to you if you went down on your bended knees and begged me for it. I won't stay in your house another minute.
Okay. First big question for you, Matt. Completely white suits. Are they ever a good look?
When I was a kid, I thought that was like the nicest outfit you could wear. But I've certainly not ever worn one as an adult.
Why not? If it's the nicest outfit you could wear.
I grew out of that mentality in my teens, I think. And just like, what is the? Do you know the? I think the one that you can kind of get away with is like a linen suit. You know, like on in summer or on holiday or something. To be fair, like John Hammond does in Jurassic Park later, but
Another man in a white
the sort
suit.
of the sort of smart white suit. I mean, when would you ever wear one? Like, what's the application of a suit like that?
I know, and I feel like as soon as I wore something like that, I mean, I'm actually wearing a white jumper whilst we're recording this, and even then, I'm always petrified of getting something on it, and most of my white clothing doesn't last longer than a week before I spill something on it. It's either coffee or some sort of sauce from cooking. Yeah, every single time.
Yeah, you want coffee-coloured clothes in the morning and sort of red clothes in the evening.
And then when do you put the white
dinner-coloured clothes?
When am I going to get to wear all these white clothes that I've got in my wardrobe?
Yeah. But would you wear one if it was kind of a infinitely secure, indestructible fabric that will never stain?
I think it'd be nice to have something like that because you'd always be clean. You'd never have to worry about that. But then if you're making all of this indestructible clothing and it's designed to be worn by someone forever, how's it ever going to decompose? Like when that person doesn't need that suit anymore, are you just going to pass it down forever?
Very interesting. I think, well, they can break it down with heat, can't they? But I suppose that's going to give off some emissions. That's not the most environmentally friendly way of breaking down anything, really, is it?
No.
I think you're right. They're thinking long term, but you've thought even longer term. You're one step ahead of them here.
I like to be one step ahead of the curve at all times. But we're talking white suits. What is the white suit in The Man in the White Suit? What's the plot of this film by Alexander McKendrick?
So Sydney Stratton, played by Alec Guinness, is a Cambridge graduate scientist or engineer focusing on textiles, and believes that he has the key to this indestructible fabric that will never stain and never need to be replaced. So he kind of bounces from jobs in textile mills until he lands in a place that will give him the funding and support and the laboratory he needs to pursue this. But then the creation of that fabric kind of creates chaos in the town that he's in, as the textile mill owner community and the workers of their factories both turn against Sydney and try and run him out of town.
Yeah, nobody wants this fabric to be made and to be mass produced because it puts everyone out of a job and it keeps the money from going to all of those business heads in industry. So it's quite an interesting film to be coming out of post-World War II Britain as well, because Britain obviously is known for the Industrial Revolution, all of that stuff that happened in the sort of Victorian era, when machines came into play, and the textile factories, I think at the time, were one of those big factories in Britain which were affected by that in a big way, because suddenly they've got machines to help them out making all these textiles, and then so on and so forth. We've got World War II happening where the textile industry is very much focused on creating uniforms for the army. So you've got lots of textiles churning out of these factories at that point. And then we're out of World War II. We're back to sort of workers' rights, and Britain's trying to find its feet again. And I feel like all of this kind of zeitgeisty stuff that's in the air is fed into this film in a lot of ways. And I think it's so interesting looking at it from a British perspective because of all of that weight that industry and capitalism has in this industry in particular.
Yeah, and class as well. The British class system is definitely on display in this film. And Sydney's an interesting character in that perspective as well, in that he sort of straddles the class warfare of the film, in that he's kind of in both camps, and yet both of them turn against him as well. So, and then unite with each other, the kind of workers and capitalist overlords by the end of the film.
It's interesting seeing his relationship to the other workers as well, isn't it? Because when you first see him, he's basically a cleaner, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got like a menial role. His words, not mine. He describes it as a menial job, but he's just sneaking into the various labs in the mills that he works in and trying to set up a very complex and traditional mad science experiment, isn't it? It's all beakers and test tubes rigged up together and bubbling liquids, with an interesting twist, a very stylistically Ealing Studios twist on the more classical mad science setups that we've seen, which is the kind of Oompa band theme tune of the experiment. It's like boom, 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 boom as it bubbles away. It's kind of making its own theme music.
Just a moment, Green. What's this? I really couldn't say, Mr. Burnley.
That was really nice signposting as well, because there's like you said, there's all these beakers in this laboratory. And also, first off, it feels weird having a laboratory in a textile mill at this time. But I suppose it's the industrialization of it, and there's probably a lot of stuff that goes into the textile industry that I have no idea about, but I never I've pictured it.
I've been on a tour of a paper mill, which is literally something that happens to Bart in The Simpsons. It's like the most boring day ever, but it was really interesting. And they've got loads of laboratory stuff because they're always looking for ways to make paper in well, essentially cheaper ways or more effective ways. But loads of R&D goes into these industries because there's loads of money in them. So yeah, they're highly motivated to spend money on research to make better or more efficient processes to make their fabrics.
It's that little peek behind the curtain that you get in this, which is really fun and quite eye-opening as well. But yeah, like you say, that sort of that oompa band sound every time you look at the experiments, pointing out to the audience that this is Sydney's experiment. So whenever you're in this lab, if you hear that sound, hear his little theme tune, that's the experiment that he's working on. And it's like a lovely little device there, like a lovely filmic device to really put you in the mode of this film and align that particular experiment with Sydney and all of the things that he's trying to do he's pretty much a mad scientist, isn't he? Because he's so driven by what he wants to get from his experiments.
He's definitely a mad scientist, but there is that tonal shift here from other films that we've been looking at this series, it's an Ealing comedy. It's a gentle, nice Ealing comedy. So it doesn't have that, there's some philosophical stuff about class and economics and stuff like that, but not about the kind of existential stuff about playing God that we've seen in earlier mad science movies. He's definitely a mad scientist, but he's a little bit detached from the other characters, but not in the kind of menacing way that a mad scientist can be. And that, a lot of that stems from that oompa music of like setting that tone. And then Sydney what did you think of Sydney as a character? What's he like for you as a mad science protagonist and a mad scientist?
He is an interesting one, isn't it? Because part of you wants to align with him because you want his experiment to work and you want him to do well out of it. But there's something about the disruption that his science causes all the time and his kind of disregard for anybody else other than his sort of next step in his scientific progression. He's always thinking about the next discovery and how to make this fabric work. And I think that's at the expense of other people, like the way that because talking about the relationships again that he has with people, when he talks to the other workers, he kind of doesn't really have them in his head when he's doing these things. He doesn't think about things in the long run in terms of their repercussions. He's just like, right, I've got access to a free lab. I'm going to use this. Doesn't matter if I don't get paid. Doesn't mean anything to me. But then your landlady's not getting paid. And then someone else is like offering you money. And he's like, no, it's fine. I don't need it, blah, blah, blah. And even things like the lunch break, when he says about like, oh, I don't need to go have like a tea break. I'm happy just working. But that has a knock-on effect to the other workers because they're like, no, we've actually fought to get this time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He's completely oblivious, really, to everybody else's considerations and anything else they might be concerned with because he's laser focused on a scientific discovery that he he's confident he's on the brink of, and he just wants to get over that line. And he's completely motivated by the science aspects of it, to the point of shutting out every other aspect of it. But I think Alec Guinness is able to tread the line of depicting that side of Sydney while also still making him likable, because he is completely oblivious to everybody else, but he's kind of happy-go-lucky at the same time, right? I don't think we hate Sydney, even though he doesn't think about anyone else, because at first it's kind of presented through the eyes of the mill owners, and we're not very sympathetic towards them, like, boo-hoo, you're all filthy rich and you're going to lose your mills. So we're not too concerned that Sydney's completely oblivious to that. But then his working class friends are like, Sydney, what the hell are you doing? We're all going to be out of work. And then you start to think, oh, this impacts on, a much greater number of people. It's not just this wealthy strata of a few men who own mills. But still, he's just happy-go-lucky, and he's like, yeah, but I really like my fabric, and I think it's really cool, and I really would like to share it with the world.
Yeah, it's that kind of juxtaposition between the good and the bad aspects of it as well. Because Alec Guinness and Sydney is both good and bad. He's like a grey area character in his actions, but he's, at the end of the day, he's trying to do what he thinks will benefit the world and also benefit him, because he's made this amazing discovery of this new synthetic fabric which won't wear and tear. There's no wear and tear on it, and it also repels dirt. But then the science itself is both good and bad as well, isn't it? Because wow, what an amazing discovery to have this crazy fabric which you could use forever. But then it's bad in the repercussions again to what that means to the workers and then the industry. And it's sort of, again, it's science as a disruptor. It's a delicate ecosystem that they've got going on here with the sort of the workers and the owners of the mill and how everything works and the way that society is built. And this kind of comes in and throws everything into disarray, because if you've got this crazy new fabric, then what will that result in for everybody else?
Yeah, I think like a lot of commercial sectors have this delicate balance of finely tuned supply and demand. You know, we saw that in early like COVID lockdowns with how everything just fell apart with the supermarkets and stuff. Everything is like on time, and it's actually more fragile than you think, but it's fragile because it's finely tuned to supply and demand. And you know, then the amount of jobs involved in that is finely tuned for the exact same reason. So that it happens in any kind of sector when there's like a technological advancement that will disrupt things and change things. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the application of it is going to have real world impacts on hundreds, thousands or more jobs in that sector. And it's not as simple as just saying like, I've got this thing and it completely changes everything, and then just putting it out in the market, especially in, as you say, a post-war British economy trying to get back on its feet and re-establish, you know, its industrial centres and key markets like textiles or whatever. There's that whole extra layer in 1951 of the kind of out of London as well. It's interesting, the film is set set in Manchester or Sheffield, or it's set near
I think
there.
it's near there, yeah.
Because he's going to Manchester at some point. It's up north, it's outside of London. It's, you know, there's different sort of social and financial considerations and, you know, all of that stuff just put on screen that kind of fill the world of the man in the white suit.
I think its relevance as well is still really key to now, because if you think about stuff like AI, which is the big technological advancement that we're dealing with at the moment, there's people worrying that this is going to put people out of jobs depending on how they use it. I think there will be a sweet spot when AI just makes everybody's jobs easier, and then the higher ups don't know anything about how you're using it, and then everyone has a nice easy time of it until the higher ups figure out that, okay, we can lose this person because we can get this to do that. That's my thinking about that. But it's quite interesting that it still holds such relevance to today.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Just any new technology that comes along can have that effect, can't it? There's a lot of stuff about the Luddites as well, the people who were, because that was directly related to textiles as well in the 1800s, I think, like destroying textile mills during the Industrial Revolution, like trying to bring all of that down because it was costing jobs. Like the industrialization of that industry cost the jobs of the manual laborers who are doing it. You know, it's every wave of industrialization and technology.
And then also the fact that things break down is so important to those industries as well, because I was reading about in the 1920s, there was this thing with light bulbs, and there was this, they called it a cartel, which automatically rings alarm bells for me. It was called the Phoebus Cartel, and they formed in 1925. And this was a international consortium of light bulb manufacturers, and all the big major guys were involved. Philips was in there as well. We know Philips today. So they agreed to standardize the lifespan of incandescent light bulbs to 1,000 hours, down from the previous 2,500. So they wanted people to be buying more light bulbs more regularly. So even though they were able to have longer lasting light bulbs, they were like, no, this isn't going to work for us industry-wise. Let's put a cap on it. Let's add the wear and tear to this technology so that people will keep buying them.
That's depressing. I think about that a lot. And I was thinking about that watching The Man in the White Suit as well, because I can completely understand where Bertha and her friends are coming from when they want to shut this down. They don't want to be out of work from this long-lasting fabric. But I was also thinking this is made in 1951 when you could buy a washing machine that would probably last for like 20 or 30 years. And now I'm spending like hundreds and hundreds of pounds on a washing machine. I'm lucky to get like 3 years out of it. And that's just the norm. Like, they're just not built to last. So, you know, there's a balance, isn't there? Like, yeah, a fabric that will never wear out would really damage the textiles industry, but I'd also like to buy a t-shirt from H&M and like still have it with no holes in 5 years later. You know, like there has to be a happy medium and not just progressing towards planned obsolescence in anything that you buy.
Yeah, a lot of these things are built to make you buy the next one. Like if you think about phones, and it's like that, everything becomes obsolete after a certain amount of time. That's sort of the way that the world works now. Everything needs a new update. God, the amount of times you have to update your phone and computers now just so it's the latest thing, and then it slows down everything else because your computer's too old to have that, and very sort of like old man problems talking about right now. But it's like it's just a part of life now, isn't it?
But it's what's being discussed in this film, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's a big thing in this film, and we've done a few episodes now where we've looked at these sort of like new breakthroughs in science, and they're from older films. I've almost turned this into a little segment point of, could this be real? Like, is it sci-fi or is it sci-fact?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
what do you think of the kind of real world equivalents of the white suit that Sydney makes?
Wow. Well, Matt, funny you ask me this. I had a little look online, and apparently nanotechnology is the way to make this a reality. Apparently they're already doing research into this. So they've developed textiles treated with nanostructures. Already sounds very scientific and official. But these nanostructures degrade organic matter when exposed to light. So they've got self-cleaning properties.
What do they do with the organic matter?
I mean, I don't know exactly, but I think the nanobots... I only know about nanobots from stuff like Metal Gear Solid, because they had like nanobots in President Dharma, I think, in one of them, Chief Dharma.
They were using it to kill people.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I know about nanobots. But yeah, so apparently they degrade the organic matter when exposed to lights. And there's antimicrobial properties in some of these new textiles they're making as well, which can reduce odor and the need for frequent washing.
Okay, so that is the white suit then.
Yeah. So you can wear this white t-shirt from H&M again and again and again because it's got nanobots and antimicrobial properties all over it.
Yeah. I do want the shirt to last longer. Do I want it to be full of nanobots?
Yeah, that's what you worry about, don't you? But I thought that was really interesting because, like, again, it's one of those things where you don't think it could ever be a reality, but people are still trying to develop these kind of technologies. So who knows, in maybe like 10, 15 years, maybe shorter, you can go out, buy your little nano t-shirt and never have to wash it.
Great. Okay.
Cool.
Deal. But won't that company fold? Because for the exact reasons set out in The Man in the White Suit.
Yeah, we should really send these companies a copy of this film so they can learn. Also, this would stop people washing, surely.
Yes.
Yeah, because you've just got...
And what about the poor washing machine companies, James?
All out of business. All out of business. But this is the thing with this film as well, isn't it? You've got the business leaders, the industrial mill owners, and you've got the workers, and they kind of unite, don't they? Which is a weird thing to see, because usually they're at odds. But in this, they're uniting against Sydney. Poor old Sydney, getting chased down by workers and mill owners in the middle of the street. Yeah,
there's some interesting, like, socioeconomic and political points in the film, but I like that it just ends up with actually the working classes and the upper classes have a common enemy, and his name's Sydney Stratton. And we're just going to run around town chasing him to try and basically get a suit off him.
Yeah, chasing him out of town to take his suit off. And that sort of final scene is very powerful when his suit does crumble.
And you feel bad for him, right?
Yeah.
Like, you do, like, you know, yes, he was going to destroy the economy of this town and possibly other parts of the country, but I think we're still on Sydney's side, right? Like, he's worked really hard. This thing that he's developed seemed to actually work and be an incredible invention, and I just feel terrible for him when 100 people are just laughing and tearing clumps of his flaky suit off him as it fails,
and he's left with his trousers down, just caught with his trousers down.
Yeah.
He's got just in the middle of the street with nothing but his pants on and a shirt.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
In that lovely wide shot from above as well, where he just looks so small and pathetic, really. not wearing any trousers and humiliated. Yeah.
It's so good though, isn't it? And all the sort of lead up to that as well, because he has, like, you see him at his best moments when he's got that white suit for the first time and how it looks kind of like luminescent in all the shots. He really stands out. Like we said, white suit is the best suit you could ever buy. At least that's what you thought when you were a child. So he's really at that kind of pinnacle at that point, and he's smoking cigars with the industry guys, and then it all comes crumbling down at the end. So yeah, you do feel that kind of that sympathy towards Sydney at that point, even though you know all of the stuff that it would lead to. But I think it's the moment just before that which I really liked, when he talks to the landlady, and his landlady says, "You scientists, can't you just leave it alone? Can't you leave stuff alone?" And then he kind of has that realization that, oh shit, what I'm doing is actually going to have a bad effect on everybody that I know and everybody that I like.
Why can't you scientists leave things alone? What about my bit of washing when there's no washing to do?
Yeah, again, it's about making Sydney likeable, isn't it? Because he does at least realise the impacts on... It's not just Bertha and his colleagues, it brings in his landlady. There's all this, like, impacts up the chain economically. Like, he's getting an idea of it. He's oblivious, but he's not stupid. So when he's presented with the facts, he's... You know, he has a good heart, I think. So he's been driven by this scientific attempt. But yeah, he can interpret what it means for people. He's not a fool.
I think the other way they humanise him as well is through Daphne, played by Joan Greenwood. We often talk about the romantic elements in these sci-fi films and whether they work or not. I think this is one of the most well-rounded ones that I've seen recently on the podcast, in just the terms of Joan Greenwood is playing a very fleshed out character. You really get a sense of what Daphne's like. It's not necessarily... Well, there is sort of like the love interest between Daphne and Sydney, but that's not what they focus on the whole time. The moment when Sydney meets Daphne for the first time and he's just reeling out all of this scientific babble about how this new fabric would work, and Daphne's just... And you just focus on Daphne for ages, just trying to absorb it. And that shot really lingers for quite a long time whilst he's saying this. And it's kind of the meet cute moment, but it's not really treated like that in the sort of obvious way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly not making any sense to her. Talking about long chain molecules and what have you. But she's absolutely charmed by it. But she's not ditzy. She's not stupid. Like, she doesn't understand any of that. But doesn't she then go off and like read about all of that and then learn about it and then be like, actually, Sydney's created something amazing here. And she's kind of his advocate for the rest of the film. But similarly, not considering any of the wider impacts on the economy, and also quite savvy as well, because she's like making a deal. They're basically trying to prostitute her out to get her to
that scene. Oh,
yeah, and she's like, well, all right, I'll do it for $5,000. Like, I'll do it for more than you want to pay me.
Yeah, and then she goes up in a little furry number and sees Sydney, but she's so savvy with that as well, because she kind of plays the role a bit to see what Sydney would do. And then she's like, I'm glad you didn't do that because I would have punched you in the face, pretty much.
Yeah, she's cool. It's full of good characters. Some of them are pretty kind of two-dimensional ciphers for a type of person, like some of the mill owners. Burnley's quite interesting because his immediate reaction is, this is actually great. I'm going to make a ton of money, but also, like, this is beneficial to society. I couldn't tell if he really thought that or if that was just, like, he really was just interested in the money. And all his colleagues had to be like, yeah, but we'll all be out of business, so we're not going to let you.
His colleagues as well. You've got the really old mill owner who comes with... Does he come with a gas tank?
Sir John.
Yeah. Does he have a gas tank? Did I imagine that? Have I just made this up?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
He's infirm.
Yeah, I feel like I've just made that bit up. But he's just got his like walking stick and he's very sort of slow. And there's a big moment when he comes into the room full of all of the other owners of the mills. And yeah, he's like the most diabolical one, isn't he? He's the one who's really in charge. The wise old industrialist.
Yeah, old geezer.
Yeah, the old geezer. It made me think of Mary Poppins when they're in the bank?
I've never seen Mary Poppins.
You've never seen Mary Poppins?
I can't remember. I don't. Presumably not. What happens in the bank?
They all go into the bank, and there's all these like rich bank owners, or bank businessmen, and there's like they're all very, very sort of like they're infirm to a degree. But yeah, you've never watched Mary Poppins. This is terrible. This is terrible.
Maybe I haven't. I've never thought about it, but yeah, now you're just mentioning stuff that I don't recognise.
Wow.
She's a nanny, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, good work, Matt. Good work.
Blind spot for me, I'm afraid.
Well, unfortunately, we will never cover Mary Poppins on this podcast unless the people really want to hear it. As a Patreon episode where I make Matt... Nah, it's not going to happen, is it? It's not sci-fi. Anyway, back to the main agenda. Man in the white suits. Do you feel like this is a quaint film?
Yeah, definitely. I think that they do... I think McKendrick does a really good job of keeping it quaint, even though it's dealing with some quite big ideas. I think he keeps focused on... I mean, he's focused on the fact that this is an Ealing comedy, right? And it has to carry that tone. You never get that serious in an Ealing comedy. Even like, I'm talking about... You got a lot of murder comedies and stuff in Ealing Studios, and it's always pretty quaint and fun. I think he's really got his eye on the ball there.
Yeah, and just quickly for our international listeners who may not be familiar with Ealing comedies, Ealing is a place in London. It's like West London, and they've got a studios based there. And then all of these films were coming out at that time, big British studio films, and Ealing comedies were specifically... a lot of the product coming out of Ealing Studios. I think they also like Hammer Horror was coming around this time. I may be completely wrong with that. But again, it's very sort of like British culture films, which really established our sort of film industry.
Yeah, lots of movies about like little old ladies getting up to mischief or being murdered for their inheritance, but in a funny way, you know.
What a juxtaposition.
Is it Arsenic and Old Lace? That'll be an Ealing one, won't it? Is that the one where Alec Guinness plays like 8 different members of the same family all being bumped
that
off?
Sounds like it would be an Ealing comedy.
That's a great one. And Passport to Pimlico. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of great movies in the Ealing comedy stable that I highly recommend. But I don't know, I can't think of another sci-fi one though.
Yeah, and I mean, Alexander McKendrick is an interesting character as well, isn't he? So when we started looking at this film, we were both like, oh, Alexander McKendrick. We know Alexander McKendrick from...
It's a name I know well, yeah.
Yeah, because during our film studies at university, years and years ago, we both had to read a book. I use read in inverted commas. Buy a book called McKendrick on Filmmaking. And I did read at least half of it at the time, and it was supposed to be like the Bible for filmmaking.
Yeah.
And every sort of essay we did would refer back to McKendrick on Filmmaking. At least a lot of the essays that I was doing, I remember having to look back in that book a lot and be like, yep, just go back to McKendrick on Filmmaking. What about you?
I don't think I ever read it. I've got the book. It's been sitting on my shelf all these years. I probably read like one chapter. We probably would have been like given a specific chapter as required reading for class or something. So I'm sure I read some of it. And then, I probably quoted it in every essay I wrote for the entire first year. But no, I can't remember much more about it. But I've never seen any of his films. Or I think he did The Lady Killers.
The Lady Killers. Yeah. The Maggie as well.
I don't know him as a filmmaker. I know him as a name on my bookshelf, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting about him as well, is because he was a film director, a screenwriter, and he was an academic because he moved to America, presenting courses and all of that kind of stuff is where his legacy went after that, because obviously he'd had those days in the trenches making these films. He was Oscar nominated. He'd really put in the time. And then he decided to teach the future generations in the California Institute of the Arts, which I think is lovely.
I wonder if he had any influence on a certain Steven Spielberg.
Maybe.
Well, shall we see if we can detect any of the McKendrick influence on arguably Steven Spielberg's best film?
Oh, yes, please. Right, let's take a little trip to Jurassic Park.
Hi listeners, hope you're enjoying the show. If you want to support us and get access to hundreds of hours of bonus episodes, you can sign up to our Patreon.
We've got discussions on all the latest sci-fi films in cinemas, the Bad Movie Bunker, and Patrons Picks, as well as mini-series covering your favourite franchises.
Patrons get to have their say on what we cover, both over on Patreon and right here on the main show too.
So if you want to join, head over to patreon.com/Journey Through Sci-Fi.
Now, back to the episode.
There it is. Welcome to Jurassic Park.
We've made living biological attractions so astounding that they'll capture the imagination of the entire planet.
The most phenomenal discovery of our time.
How'd you do this?
Becomes the greatest adventure of all time.
May I touch it?
Sure.
Universal Pictures presents
You feel that?
Hold on to your butts.
a Steven Spielberg film.
Senses of feeling all over the park.
Yeah, that's nice. Gotta go.
An adventure.
Look out! I can't get Jurassic Park back online.
65 million years in the making. Jurassic Park.
Did you see this at the cinema, James? We would have been about 5 years old.
I did not see this at the cinema.
This is one of the first films I think I saw at the cinema.
Oh my God, at 5?
Yeah, I don't fully remember it. We then got it on VHS, and I remember watching it on VHS more. But I know that my older brother was really upset by this movie. He, huge dinosaur fan, wanted to be a paleontologist, but too scary, this one.
Killed the dream.
And that in the sort of family lore, I was not upset, and I think it was just because I was too young to understand what was going on, and my brother was just old enough to be absolutely terrified by this.
Wow. So you weren't terrified at all? You just stone cold Matt watching
Apparently
this?
not. Apparently not.
Amazing.
Yeah, like I said, I don't remember it, but yeah.
Wow.
I mean, 5 years old. I mean, just like not even paying attention. Probably. I'm surprised. I sat there in the cinema for 2 hours.
Wow. Every time I think of Jurassic Park as well, I think of that theme tune. Like, you can't say Jurassic Park and not have the da-da-da-da-da. That is always in your head when you're thinking about it.
Yeah, truly iconic music, but iconic everything in this film. It's like a timeless film. It's barely aged a day since 1993. It looks amazing, feels amazing, like great pacing, dialogue, everything works so well. It's not just like that. I think it probably is Spielberg's best film, but it will always blow my mind that it came out in the same year as Schindler's List as well.
Mad.
Like, and he's done that several more times, like put 2 films out in 1 year, but he's never done it with 2 films of the quality of Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. Just at the peak of his powers in the early 90s as a filmmaker, really established, talented, and confident to just do anything, to make a movie of this scale, a sci-fi action movie of this scale, while simultaneously making kind of a definitive film about the Holocaust at the same time, balancing the tone just in your own head, you know, of working on 2 enormous projects that disparate, and making them both brilliant in the end result. Just an incredible year for filmmaking, I think, just for that alone.
Crazy. It's crazy to think about. And like you say, the fact that this was made in 1993, but it still looks very fresh in terms of like it's aged really well. And I'm always surprised by how well this film is aged every time I revisit it. But I think my first experience of watching it must have been when it premiered on BBC One around Christmas time, I think. And I remember watching it, and I remember all of these little bits, like the King Kong line. He said, "What have you got in there, King Kong?" Yeah. And then I remember I think my uncle made a joke about, "Oh no, it's more like Godzilla." And every time I see that line, hear that line, and see that gate now, I think of that little stupid joke that he made. And there's loads of bits like that which are so sort of ingrained into my mind about this film. I think as any sort of 90s kids who experienced Jurassic Park at a young age, it stays with you, this film, because all of the exciting moments, the thrill ride, the fact if you were like into dinosaurs at the time, and you see them like in real life basically when you're watching this film. All of the animatronics and the visual effects, it's just so memorable and iconic.
And it's Dan Winston again, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's another element of the iconic crew being put together. You just mentioned the score. It's John Williams' score, one of the most famous, successful film composers of all time. Stan Winston doing those effects. Yeah. He's absolutely iconic, and particularly from our point of view as sci-fi fans, just, an incredibly important person behind the scenes, pulling together all of these iconic elements and then sort of introducing this CGI. I mean, this is after Terminator 2, so James Cameron has laid a lot of groundwork for incredible CGI, but it's still this first wave of very impressive big CGI, which is going to derail cinema for the next 20 to 30 years after this point. But, at this point in time, it's just incredible and, changes the whole landscape of film, really.
Well, that's it. It's the mad science of the filmmaking again that we see in this film.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a perfect way to look at this because, like you say, you had Stan Winston using these stop motion visual effects, and that was initially how they were going to do all the dinosaurs. And then I don't know who it was, but I saw an interview with Steven Spielberg, and whoever was working with Industrial Light and Magic had made the scene where you got the stampede of I'm not going to be able to pronounce the dinosaur name.
Gallimimus.
Gallimimus. This is why you're here, Matt, to fill in the blanks. And yeah, when they're doing the stampede scene, he'd made this on a computer, like he'd done the previs, and he was like, oh yeah, does this work? Steven Spielberg saw it and was like, and all the other producers saw it and they were like, wow, we can actually do this now. We can make this a reality and we can blur both of the practical effects and the CGI. And then you look at everything that's come after that. Like, all of the Marvel films wouldn't exist if Steven Spielberg and his team hadn't been connecting the dots and then putting all of this stuff together in this film.
Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It's a good thing, Matt. Let's leave it as a good thing. It was a bit hit or miss in the 90s and the early 2000s. I'm looking at you, Van Helsing. But yeah. Yeah.
I think what we need now, but I think it's gone a bit stagnant, hasn't it? I think we need Steven Spielberg to come back and reinvent. Steven Spielberg and James Cameron need to reinvent cinema again, get away from the CGI and do something else. Cameron thinks it's going to be 3D, but I don't think we're going with him on that journey.
No, he's going to make something though. Cameron will make something we'll watch films underwater in a tank.
Yeah.
And it'll be something really different and cool. But yeah, I can't see it happening. Anyway, what else is really cool? Jurassic Park is really cool. The idea of a Jurassic Park, I always thought that as a kid, even though it's absolutely terrifying. Would you go to Jurassic Park to have a look at the dinosaurs if it was safe and it passed its risk assessments?
Yeah, I think I would. Even though, are you talking about in a universe where the Jurassic Park movies exist, and I'm aware of the risks?
They might have subbed it down into a warning health and safety video at the start of the experience.
I think in either case, I think I wouldn't be able to resist the temptation. I think of seeing a living, breathing dinosaur. I think I'd have to go there. What about you?
I think so, yeah. I think it's also, if they get those coupons that they're talking about, it's we'll do a coupon day. Yeah, sure. A little cheap trip over to Jurassic Park. It would be a hell of an experience, but would also be terrifying. I feel like even if they just had herbivores, though, I think it would still be scary.
That's the thing I think about the kind of theme park element of it is what's Grant's reaction to the velociraptors? He's just you bred raptors. He doesn't kind of follow up on that thought, but I think it's clear what he thinks about it. It's why did they breed the raptors? Because when you look at the raptor enclosure, it's not very tourist friendly, is it? You can only look down and in, and then there's heavy foliage and there's all that safety stuff for good reason, obviously. But what are the tourists getting at seeing the raptors? They're such a dangerous predator as they're presented in the film. So why even bother? The T-Rex, I can understand. It's the iconic dinosaur. You have to have a T-Rex, I think, at your dinosaur theme park, even though it's very dangerous. But the raptors, I was just nobody explains why they bothered to breed the raptors. Like, it's hubris, isn't it? It's hubris. They just don't expect the raptors to get out.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's the hubris of the science in this and the scientists. There's an amazing game of Jurassic Park. Did you ever play Theme Park World?
I think so, yeah.
So they've done a Jurassic Park version of that. And it's stuff like that. So you have like your T-Rex in one pen, and then you have your Velociraptors in another one, and you get loads of money for having them there, but you have to have your security really high the whole time. And occasionally there's a storm, and it fucks up all of your fences, and then they escape and they start eating the rest of the visitors in your theme park, and you have to think about all of that.
And that's bad for business.
Very bad for business, but I highly recommend.
So in the game, you can have guests die at the hands of dinosaurs, and you can continue playing and running your theme park.
Yeah, but you lose loads of money, so you have to kind of
that's so gross.
You have to just quickly like re-put the fences up, and you have to recover again. But then also, if you put certain breeds of dinosaurs together in one pen, you can't do that. Can't do that, Matt. Some will be okay, and you can have like a really big pen, but then others will start eating each other or fighting, and you have to think about all of this. It's a delicate ecosystem in the game, and it's fully realised.
Hey, that's business, though, isn't it?
That's business. And this film is all about business because they're trying to make a theme park with dinosaurs. So it's all profits, isn't it, for this?
Yeah, and Hammond's a really interesting character, isn't he, in the context of mad scientists and industrialists, because he is sort of sitting on both sides of that line, but he's not a scientist, is he? He employs scientists. He's got a vision, but he is a salesman, isn't he? There's that really interesting conversation he has with Dr. Sattler when everything's gone wrong, and he's talking about his flea circus.
Yeah.
And that you get that real insight into him. He's not a scientist. He is just a showman, but an obsessive showman with a lot of money behind him who wants to just create the biggest spectacle possible. I think that's the best Hammond scene, that one, where you get that insight into what do you want here? What do you actually want? Because he's not entirely driven by money, because he pushes back, like you say, with the vouchers thing. Like, that's his idea. He doesn't want it to be for the super rich. He wants everyone to come and be amazed by this spectacle that he's created.
But that's an ego thing, isn't it, though? He wants everybody to see how good the theme park that he's made is. So it's all driven by his own ego, ultimately. And even like the way he dresses as well. We talked about the white suit comparison, as in like the man in the white suit. Hammond is the man in the white suit in this. He's dressed completely in white, and that juxtaposes again. You've got Jeff Goldblum's character, who is looking at the darker side of things. So of course he wears dark colours. He's dressed in black with his leather jacket. The good versus evil side of things, which is sort of like symbolised by their attire, is quite an interesting element of it. It's all very deliberate, isn't it? But him as this kind of mix between, well, he's a showman, isn't he? Hammond is a showman. That's what he's there for.
Yeah, totally. But it's all artifice. That's Sattler's point, I suppose, when she's having a go at him.
And again, we've got this scientific advancement which has been made in this film. The idea of genetic engineering and bringing back species which have long since gone extinct. So in this film, the scientific advancement is this genetic engineering. It's being used for profit, but they're not looking at the repercussions of it. So it's kind of slightly different to the man in the white suit. Initially, they're like, okay, we can sell this new fabric, but then in doing that, this is going to do this, this, and this. In this, you've got that kind of disruption again. You've got this theme park being made, but in doing it, can they control what they've made? Can they control these dinosaurs and let people in?
Yeah. There's still a short-sightedness, isn't there? I think Hammond's short-sightedness is that he just wants to create as much spectacle as possible. He's employed a load of scientists who are obviously, enthusiastic about the opportunity to work on this amazing bit of mad science, bringing dinosaurs back from extinction. It has to be external viewpoints that come in and tell him it's actually really dangerous to have a load of velociraptors and T-Rex running around an island that tourists are going to be on. And even one of them is a lawyer who's like, nah, it's great. We can make a load of money off it. So, he's not, there is short-sightedness there. But thankfully, we have Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, Ian Malcolm coming in to balance that out and think about the repercussions of the mad science that Hammond wants to exploit.
And how does this mad science work then in terms of the genetic engineering? Because they're bringing back these species which have gone extinct. They're bringing back dinosaurs. How do they go about doing this? So they've got this DNA strand that they've... I mean, this is the beauty of this film. They make it very easy to understand this crazy science that's being made. And they do it in this great filmic device, which is the theme park ride and the animation of Mr. DNA. And as a kid, you can understand it. As an adult, you can understand it. And it's totally clear as to how they've made these dinosaurs, which is a beautiful thing.
Dino DNA. Yeah, they're just extracting fossilized but intact dinosaur DNA. And in 1993, I think cloning is enough of a sort of well-known enough concept that once you can say, well, as long as you can explain where you got real DNA from, I think, then everything follows relatively comfortably from there, doesn't it? There's some stuff in there where it really gets like overly complicated around the amphibian DNA, and it takes a leap. It takes a big leap with the, some West African frogs have spontaneously changed sex. Therefore, these dinosaurs that we brought back from extinction that have some amphibian DNA filling up their genetic code may also have done the same, and have done. Not just may also, they have done that. That's what's happened on the Earth.
Well, life will find a way, Matt.
Life finds a way.
Life always finds a way, and it does in this film. And the dinosaurs we've talked about like how they were made with the CGI and the practical effects, but they're so in depth in terms of their designs. Obviously, they're going from like historical, scientific diagrams of these dinosaurs. I think they use some sort of poetic license with them, I think, in certain aspects. I don't know.
In the design?
I think so, potentially. I don't know exactly. I'm not a paleontologist. I don't know how accurate all of the dinosaurs are.
I mean, following this, like, it became quite a popular interpretation that some or many dinosaurs may have been feathered. And obviously, if you cloned them, then you would find that out. Like, your velociraptor would pop out of its egg with a few nascent feathers on it. You know, they've just followed the sort of general understanding of what dinosaurs looked like at the time, I suppose.
That velociraptor is not cute coming out of that egg.
No, he's a little squirmy little monster goblin thing.
Terrifying, but they're all like,
oh,
look at him, it's so cute. I'm like, no, this is not the reaction you would have.
Push.
No, for God's sake. And he's like, yeah. Sam Neill's like stroking his little claws on his little neck.
Very good. Push. Very good. God. Push. Come on. Come on then. There you are.
Yeah, even Sam Neill, who's like, oh, you bred raptors, like, but he's so in awe of it, isn't he? Just, he's seeing a dinosaur. That's what he loves. There's a great moment within that. Another great Hammond moment, which is there's just the little like snippets of Hammond that when you build it up into the picture of him, like he insists on being there for the birth of every dinosaur in Jurassic Park, and it's like, what do you mean by that? Like, what's your plan? Like, how many dinosaurs do you want to have, and are you really going to be there in the lab for every single one of them? That doesn't sound like a realistic prospect. If you want to make this a big theme park. He's in the video talking to himself. Is that going to be shown? And he's talking about, the soundtrack's going to be better. We're going to put a permanent soundtrack on this. So he's implying this is the video they're going to use. And then what, John? Are you going to be doing the tour and interacting with the video, John, for every customer that comes through Jurassic Park? I don't think so. It's just the arrogance of the man and the short-sightedness. Like, that's the plan. But if you actually sort of think that through, none of that works. It's not scalable for John. But he's quite megalomaniacal about how he wants to run the park, because he is this showman who's just really arrogant, actually, and wants to be in control and wants everyone to be amazed by what he's done, basically.
It's the fact he doesn't listen to anybody as well, because all of these other scientists and people which are with the dinosaurs day to day, like Muldoon, who's the gamekeeper, he says when Sam Neill and everyone come up, he says, look, they should all be killed. They're too dangerous. Why have we got them? And Hammond's like, no, let's go and have some nice food. My chef's there cooking us up a delicious meal. Let's go. Why are we here watching this cow gets slaughtered. No.
Yeah. The Velociraptors get a cow, but the T-Rex only gets a goat.
Yeah, the goat's really tiny for a T-Rex to have, isn't it? But then
no wonder he eats Gennaro.
He's hungry. He's a hungry guy.
She's a hungry
lady.
Could have spontaneously become a guy by that point, actually.
Could have. Who knows? This the way that this film works. All of the mysteries and intricacies of this film. But yeah, I think basically in terms of the scientific accuracy, they did their best in terms of the knowledge that was available in the early 1990s. So I think since then, things have changed and they know more from obviously studying for all of that extra time, all of those years. I think there's stuff like, apparently like real velociraptors were about the size of a turkey.
Oh, I think they knew that at the time. I think that's just a creative choice because it's turkey-sized.
It's not the same, is it?
And actually, doesn't the kid kind of call out Grant at the dig? Don't know why. No, he doesn't say that it's only the size of a turkey, but he says it just looks like a turkey to me, as in like he's not scared of it. But they would have known that. They know that from the skeletons, don't they? Unless they just assumed every Velociraptor skeleton was like a juvenile. But I think they knew that. I think it's just Spielberg being like, bigger is scarier.
Yeah.
We're not going to be afraid of 5 turkey-sized Velociraptors.
No. Although later on in the sequels, you've got the little tiny dinosaurs, which are quite terrifying. Yeah, those are scary.
Compysaurus.
Yeah. Oh, see, he knows. But I think it's good that Spielberg's taken a few creative liberties with this because it makes it a more thrilling, entertaining movie. You want stuff like how the velociraptors interact and how they hunt. You want to have this kind of information because if you're fed it early in the film, you're looking out for it later on. Like they're coming from the sides. When Dr. Grant is explaining to that kid and scaring the living shit out of him by whacking out his little velociraptor claw and saying they'll do this and they'll slice this and they'll let your intestines hanging out.
He slashes at you here or here. Or maybe across the belly, spilling your intestines. The point is, you are alive when they start to eat you. So, try to show a little respect.
Okay.
But that creative license that they take with the creature design is also important for the characterization of the dinosaurs, isn't it? The dinosaurs all have personality. They're all dangerous to varying degrees, but they have individual personalities. The Velociraptors are intelligent, sneaky, and deadly.
Clever girl.
The T-Rex is deadly, but it's just a big stomping monster who is a bit indiscriminate, I think, in what it's doing. If it moves, it's going to chase it, basically, is the T-Rex's personality.
But it's got a weakness as well, because like you say, if it moves, it'll chase it because it can't see anything that's not moving. And all of this kind of stuff is really good for the film characterizing those dinosaurs and getting a sense of them, like the one that spits the venom. Don't know that one?
Dilophosaurus?
He does know that one. You should have been a paleontologist.
And the Brachiosaur is friendly because it's a big herd animal. So we kind of we have associations with present day large herd animals, and we kind of apply that to the Brachiosaur, where, rightly or wrongly. Like, what, if a Brachiosaur went over to a tree and there was 3 little creatures nested in the tree, who's to say the Brachiosaur is not just going to headbutt them out of the way onto the ground? Like, we don't know, do we? But it's a herbivore. It's therefore a friendly dinosaur. It's a Vegisaurus, so it's characterized like a big cow/giraffe, calling to each other, and they've got all these kind of community, personality to them that Grant is mesmerized by. So that feeds into this characterization, and then there's a dividing line between carnivores and herbivores that lends to personality. So Triceratops, which I don't know, I would think a real world example would be hippos and rhinos that you wouldn't really just go up to and stroke in the wild. That's not a good idea. But this one's ill, so it's kind of harmless in that sense, so it becomes a friendly one.
And all of the way they've done the sound design for the way that the dinosaurs sound as well, like all of the little intricate effects that they've done. So The T-Rex is like a combination of different animal sounds. The Velociraptor is, I think for the T-Rex they used baby elephants and tigers and alligators, and then Velociraptors, it was...
There's some dolphin clicks in there, isn't
yeah,
there? The
dolphins, manatees, a lot of sea creatures, sea mammals, all of this kind of stuff to really bring them to life. And even the egg cracking sound, apparently it's like an ice cream cone being crunched in someone's hand, which I like.
Very good.
But yeah, it brings it to life. It gives these creatures a sense of reality when you're watching it, because you're seeing them on screen, these stop motion animations, the animatronics and the CGI, and it's all combining to create this real sense of realism for the film. And because the film doesn't depend on one kind of technology the whole time, it's mixing them all. It sort of creates this great sense of realism.
Yes, it's the mad science of filmmaking again, isn't it? It's just that kind of cocktail and the alchemy of bringing together those techniques to create the verisimilitude of the whole thing, that you just feel like you're watching dinosaurs. There's lots of CGI, but it's not overwhelming. Whenever you don't need to see the whole body of a dinosaur, basically, it's a puppet. There's some full-size Velociraptor puppets as well, right? I think
there must be.
Very big Velociraptor puppets. I mean, some of the puppets are enormous. The Brachiosaur's head is huge. The T-Rex's head is huge. And I think they have like full body Velociraptors at points.
Yeah, they must have had I think even, did they have people wearing raptor suits? I think they did for this one.
Right, that must be what they've done, yeah.
Yeah, because you need to get that kind of movement as well. And when they're stalking the kids in the kitchen, I think that's one scene where it's so dependent on making these creatures really realistic, like the way they jump on the surfaces and they poke their heads through wires and cables earlier on. All of that stuff is so important to creating that realism, but also the suspense that these things are going to get you from wherever they may be. You can't see them. We know how they hunt. We know that they are going to eat you and kill you in the worst way. So that builds up all of that tension. And the way that Spielberg is building up tension throughout this entire film is so effortless as well. Like even stuff with not seeing the dinosaurs in the paddocks at the start. You've got that initial shot where they see the big Brachiosauruses.
Yeah, you get a dinosaur. He gives you a dinosaur early doors. Like he delivers on the promise. But then you get nothing until the second hour of the movie, really.
Yeah, and then it's like, right, okay, they're all escaping now, so you better be careful. They're going to chase you in the rain. And even the rain, like having those scenes with the T-Rex in the rain makes it seem more realistic, because you see the water coming off of the dinosaur. Everything's very sort of visceral. You can see it and feel it.
Yeah, like using CGI when you need to see a whole dinosaur, the full body shots, but then bringing it back in for the physicality of the beast. Like water dripping off the T-Rex is so important. Having actors face to face with the dinosaur at times, whether it's slamming a door on a Velociraptor's face and like wrestling with the physicality of it, or the T-Rex just breaking through into the Jeep that the kids are in. You need to have the characters interacting with them physically. So pulling back the CGI and then going back and, putting money into the puppetry because it's worth it, because you need the physical creatures there on set with your actors.
But it's even attention to detail when it's the CGI, because there's a moment in the T-Rex chase scene, which I was reading about, and you see the T-Rex is CGI, it's chasing after them. Again, attention to detail, the wing mirror says something like things may appear closer, something along.
They're closer. The objects in the mirror are closer than they appear.
Exactly, which is a nice little touch. Loads of little touches like that in this. But the T-Rex is coming forward. It's chasing them. It's CGI, and then it knocks the car. And as it knocks the car, you see a dent form in the car itself. So everything is like rigged so that things will happen at a certain time. The Jeep will move to one side. There'll be a dent in it suddenly. It's all just so intricate, and it just creates this perfect combination of this is actually happening in real time.
Yeah, definitely. And you don't always know I think you don't always know when things are CGI in the film, which is great. So, for example, the T-Rex is when the T-Rex is headbutting and knocking around the Jeep that Lex and Tim are in when it's first out. At times, I thought that might have been a CGI Jeep as well as a CGI T-Rex, but I wasn't sure. Like you say, it's putting dents in the cars that it's interacting with the physical environment. I wasn't actually sure which bits were computer imagery and which weren't. And that's great. I don't want to always know. I want to be kept on my toes about that kind of thing, not just assume.
Yeah, because you're so in it with this film throughout the entire thing, and you take it as read. This is a real world that they've created in this. But I've got another sci-fi or sci-fact for you, Matt.
Sci-facts.
Could this be real? Is that a good title for this? Listeners, if you've got a better title for this little segment I'm trying to shoehorn into episodes...
Well, sci-facts is good.
Sci-facts. Okay, sci-facts. Working title. We'll see how we go with this.
Okay.
So,
what's your sci-fact, James?
So, can they make dinosaurs, Matt? Do you think it's going to come? Or what's the closest thing?
Not to my knowledge, no. Because we don't have enough of the dino DNA, right? Like, where would we be getting it from? These mosquitoes are... It's a bit far-fetched, isn't it, the mosquito thing? Because it's like, you need a mosquito that has just fed off a dinosaur, one specific dinosaur, not a mix of, like, dinosaurs, or just, like, other, like, boring little creatures that you're not trying to clone, and then got trapped in amber, and then you found it and you were able to extract that specific DNA and enough of that DNA to reconstruct a whole DNA sequence, right? Too many convenient things happen and fall into place. That's my sort of understanding of it. Do you think are they on the verge of doing this?
Well, I don't know about dinosaurs, but woolly mammoths are on the verge, apparently. So in 2013, Revive and Restore organised their first public meeting on de-extinction. So they brought together all of these scientists from across the globe to work on reviving lost species. And the woolly mammoth and the passenger pigeon were two of the species they really focused in on. So the idea with the woolly mammoth revival, again, this seems mad. So it's the aim is to create a cold-resistant elephant with traits of the woolly mammoth by editing Asian elephant DNA. So they're going to try and produce a hybrid calf by 2028. Now that seems mad. Like, also just like, we're gonna fuck around with DNA and we're gonna make like a woolly mammoth is fine. And we're also gonna make passenger pigeons. So they're looking at doing that as well. So they're trying to reintroduce this species by creating living pigeon models carrying specific genes, which will get passed down, and then I assume that will make like a passenger pigeon in next generations because the genes are being passed down again. So they're
kind of re-selectively evolving a passenger pigeon.
But there's all of this stuff about this. The company's called Revive and Restore, and it's genetic rescue of endangered and extinct species. So they're looking into all of this science at the moment, and there's a guy called Stuart Brand who's heading it. I haven't watched it, but Stuart has done a big TED talk on all of this, all of the different species that they could bring back to life. And I'm just fascinated by this. Again, it's the real life science meeting the sci-fi.
That's amazing. And I wonder how much of that was, if that's a sort of current ongoing thing, I wonder how much of that would have been accelerated by a film like Jurassic Park being an enormous commercial and cultural success. So a whole generation of people being interested in that kind of science, and just unlocking some funding as well for that, like institutions being more interested in it because the public's more interested in it, unlocks a lot of funding for that kind of thing, and the people to do the work because they've grown up fascinated by the idea.
Yeah. Could you imagine if there's like dodos and stuff in the next 10, 15 years just hanging out?
Is it true that dodos went extinct because they were so delicious? Because that seems disastrous if we brought that back, right? I don't actually know if that's true or just sort of an apocryphal story.
Wow.
But, I'd be worried for any dodos that came back.
Yeah,
basically.
you'd see like restaurants in London, like, get your delicious dodos. Delicious Dodo's a good name for a restaurant.
Dodos, oh no.
Come down to Delicious Dodos. Well, let's hope that doesn't become a sci-fact.
So I mentioned before that I think this is Spielberg's best film for my money, and I think it is genuinely one of the best films ever made, and just aging like a fine wine. Do you have any favourite moments within a brilliant film like this?
Oh, well, we talked about the chase scene with the T-Rex already. I do like that moment when Dennis gets his comeuppance.
Yeah, I was actually surprised by how much I enjoyed every scene with Dennis Nedry. Like,
Yeah.
Wayne Knight is a comedic actor, you know, that's like mostly known from Seinfeld. He was also like a supporting character on Third Rock from the Sun. He's really funny. And he just plays it as a comedy role throughout. Even when he's getting eaten by a dinosaur, there's a slapstick slip noise. Did you catch that? Have you ever noticed that? It's like a whoosh sound when he falls over, which should be weird in a film like this, but Wayne Knight plays it as a comedy role throughout. He's amazing in it. He's so funny. The scene with Dodgson at the start, Dodgson, we got Dodgson here. And when he's like got to go and sneak off and commit his corporate espionage crime, he's so nervous and just like, can I get any of you guys a drink? We're going to the vending machine, like a drink. Like he's brilliant in it. But yeah, he gets a deserved comeuppance. You're not really supposed to enjoy it when people get eaten by the dinosaurs, but you're allowed to enjoy that one. It's good fun.
You know, you can buy the shaving cream.
Barbasol.
Yeah, the Barbasol.
Yeah, it's a real product.
But like, you can buy a recreation.
Oh, like a hidden compartment.
Yeah. So you've got one where it's got like the hidden compartment, and it's like a cryogenic canister that you can buy online.
That's amazing. That'd be so useful for stealing embryos.
That's what we need to do. We can go on an embryo stealing spree. It's great because it's got real shaving foam on the top, so they'll never know.
Yeah. What were your favourite scenes when you were a kid, like when you first saw it? Is it that the King Kong Gate
Kong Gate sequence. Anything with the Velociraptors, because it was terrifying. I loved that. The kitchen scene. When I watched it this time, I really, really liked the electric fence, because I'm still filled with tension and dread when they're climbing that fence, knowing that it's coming at some point.
And especially that before, kind of in the build up to that sequence, you've got Alan Grant explaining like, the power's down, it's fine, we can just climb over. But meanwhile, that's cut against Ellie, who is on her way to like reinstate the power. So you're just like building up that tension of what the different groups are doing. And we've already established that Lex is a great climber, but Tim is useless and scared and already afraid of going up high places because of what's already happened. Brilliant stuff.
It's that reaction that Ellie gives as well. Like, she's like, yes, the power's on. And then you know that poor old Timmy's just getting electrocuted. And then they make it even worse by the Velociraptor poking its head out. So it's just compounded this thrill sequence. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah. Again, I was talking about the physicality of actually having to interact with the Velociraptors. Ellie slamming the gate on the Velociraptor and then getting knocked back. You cannot do that with CGI. There needs to be something bumping into Laura Dern there. You need to feel that. And it's, that's amazing.
What about scenes for you?
Well, I mean, it was my favorite bit when I was a kid, and I think it's still my favorite moment. Like, really, like, makes my hairs stand up on my arms, the back of my neck and stuff. Is the T-Rex just bursting in at the end?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think when I was a kid, I thought, like, the T-Rex is like a good guy.
Yeah.
The T-Rex is
It's
a
what
hero.
you're supposed to feel like, isn't it?
Well, kind of, but I think it's just like the T-Rex is an unstoppable force of nature, and our characters got lucky with its appearance at the very end. They've been very unlucky with its appearances so far, and it just so happens that it went for the most fast-moving prey, which was the deadly Velociraptors. But the Velociraptors really are the villains of the film by that point, when it should be Hammond, but it's the Velociraptors. And then, the T-Rex just showing up and saving the day. I think for kids, you want the T-Rex to save the day, right? The T-Rex is the number one dinosaur, right? Everybody loves it. That's why it's Rex.
Yeah.
It's the king.
But then it's interesting as the sequels go on, they kind of phase out the T-Rex a little bit and then replace it with bigger, scarier dinosaurs.
Yeah, you got to one-up
it.
Allosaurus is a bit bigger or whatever.
And then what they do to sort of combat that is sometimes the T-Rex will be the good guy, but then they turn the Velociraptors into good guys as well, don't they?
In Jurassic World.
Yeah, so it all sort of switches up at that point.
And they've got an even bigger made-up T-Rex in Jurassic World, haven't they? Yeah.
Again, playing with DNA and doing crazy stuff. But this initial one where you've got really scary Velociraptors who are always after you, and then the T-Rex, just like you said, the force of nature aspect of it is just really clear. And it's that amazing bit when the banner's falling down, you just see the T-Rex roaring, and it's like, we did it, we're out. Great.
Yeah, but we just left this island full of dinosaurs. That's just like the hanging thread, which is a good thing to pick up in the sequels, I think. But that kind of irresponsible mad science, of course. That's what we've always been looking at this series. And I think it's interesting we don't have really a classic mad scientist in the film. There is mad science, there is mad experiments going on, but Hammond is running the show, and he's not a scientist. He's an industrialist and a showman, as we've discussed. And then you've got, is it B.D. Wong playing the sort
Henry
of
Wu,
but he's an employee, and he answers to Hammond, and he's just actualizing Hammond's vision. So there is no mad science. He's not mad. He's actually very competent, sensible, and sort of a bit of a background character, really, or a supporting character rather, to Hammond's vision. So we don't have a mad scientist at the center of this movie.
But then they make Henry Wu become more of a mad scientist as it goes on, don't they? They kind of make his character more of the evil guy. He's like the one who's doing the crazy experiments.
Okay, he gets a turn at the mad science.
Yeah, exactly. But then, to sort of counteract that, we've got a lot of scientists, haven't we? So you've got Alan Grant, Ian Malcolm, and Ellie Sattler, and this kind of trio of great scientists, all with different perspectives on what Hammond's doing, all with different specialities and backgrounds. They kind of explain the science to us as an audience, and also the repercussions of all of this science, and then what that could lead to and what the problems are. So they're kind of like the voice of reason throughout this, but they've all got very different viewpoints, which I think is another really good way that Spielberg is explaining this to an audience.
And it's an interesting choice that like Ian Malcolm is a pretty annoying character. He's sleazy and he's completely right. He's like called it from the beginning. Like Alan Grant is really the hero, and Ellie as well. They're like a pair, and they're the main hero characters, but they get swept up in it. They do get swept up. They've got some reservations, and they are the voice of reason, but they are very swept up in what Hammond's created. But Ian Malcolm is like very consistent in his opinion. Before they arrive, he's like, this is a bad idea, John. And then when he gets there, he's the only one saying like, this is going to go wrong. You cannot contain nature at this scale. It's just far too dangerous. And he's trying to like explain it using chaos theory, but I think the simpler terms would be more effective here. It's just not going to work, John. It's dangerous. You've got dangerous animals here, and you're too hubristic about it. But he's also a big sleaze bag, so he's kind of annoying in the first half of the movie.
But yeah, the danger of the science, this science as a disruptor again, and going against the natural order of things, is something that the film really focuses on. And even down to, again, the minute details that they've got. There's a computer in one of the scenes, which I think Samuel Jackson's character goes up to, and it's got a scientist on the left, and it's Oppenheimer.
It's got a picture of Oppenheimer.
Yeah, it's Oppenheimer, isn't
That's
it?
Nedry's computer.
Yeah.
Nedry's put that up, which I think is really interesting for him as a character. And he's done a little doodle of like an atomic mushroom cloud, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So he's sort of joking around about Oppenheimer's legacy, I suppose.
It's like, this is probably bad news, but I want to get rich off of it at the same time. So, but yeah, like little subtle things like that throughout the entire film. I'm sure there's like a abundance of websites you can go on and find lots of different little Easter eggs about this film and different little
One of my
details.
favorite shots is the Velociraptor that has the DNA code or the GATC reflected back. There's when it gets into the control center, and one of the computer screens is just like relaying a load of that DNA code, and it just reflects back onto the dinosaur's whole side of its face. That's such a great shot. It's, subtle as a sledgehammer, but I loved it.
There's so much about this film to love, though, isn't it? And I think it is sort of the epitome of mad science. It's got all of the things you want in it. It's the sort of hubris of a mad scientist or mad businessman in this case. And then you've got the sort of the voices of reason in there, and it all goes to shit because they're not thinking about what the effects are of this particular science.
And I do think that the extra little magic ingredient in making these films timeless is the mad science going on behind the scenes as well, that we've talked about, in several of the films we looked at. The mad science of the filmmaking, I think, is the secret ingredient to making a truly timeless mad science movie.
So I think both of these films, they've taken this mad science element and they've added different kinds of genre to it. So Man in the White Suit is got this comedy edge to it. It's a bit of a satire. It's very satirical. And then Jurassic Park has got these thriller, horror elements to it as well, which really bring out the mad science in a different way. And I think that's the beauty of these films, is that they work on different levels and you can get a completely different film and a different effect on the audience. But then the message remains that you've got to be careful about what you're doing with this science, and these scientific discoveries do have ramifications and they can cause major disruptions. And if left unchecked, when everyone's seeing these dollar signs, you need to take a step back and think, is this really going to help people out?
The mad science needs guardrails.
Needs some guardrails.
That's true in all of these films.
They need to be doing more risk assessments for these mad science experiments.
It's boring though, isn't it? Risk assessment.
No one wants to do a risk assessment. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of Journey Through Sci-Fi. Remember, if you're not already subscribed to the show, make sure you are so you can find out when the next episodes are dropping on your podcast feed.
You can follow us on social media. If you check out your various social medias of choice, we're probably there. We're on most of them, or you can come to our website, journeythroughscifi.com. to find out more.
Yes, lots of stuff on that website. And if you want a free and easy way to support the podcast, you can leave us a review. We always love to get reviews. If you can leave us a little comment on there, it'll help out all the various algorithms out. And it's a quick and easy way to help new listeners discover the show.
You can also check out patreon.com/journey through sci-fi to unlock all of our bonus content. We've got absolutely tons of stuff over there. I'm talking Bad Movie Bunker, Patrons Pick, Brave New Movie Reviews, Expanse miniseries, Terminator miniseries, Planet of the Apes miniseries, and plenty other stuff as well. Come and join us on Patreon.
Yes, do. And remember, if you do join us on Patreon, you get a say in the content we make over there. So come and join in the fun. But we've got more stuff coming for your ears in the main feed, haven't we, Matt? What are we looking at next time on Journey Through Sci-Fi?
Next time we've got more shrinking, this time accidental shrinking, The Incredible Shrinking Man from 1957 and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids from 1989.
Someone should have done a risk assessment.
They should have done.
Well, I have a little feeling that'll be a good episode.
All right, we will talk to you soon, listeners.
Bye.